PanWorks, bringing ethics to life.
I am very happy to welcome you all to the next webinar in our series on One Health and Conservation. For those of you that are joining us after our last 3 webinars, welcome back. We are very lucky that we were able to host one more session before summer starts for everyone, and to continue this series, which has been really, really interesting and really successful over the last month. Just from SCBNA side of things, a quick thank you to PanWorks for continuing to collaborate with us on this session. This has been an incredible collaborative experience, and we are looking forward to future sessions and future projects over the next few months. And again, as a reminder, this is a series that has been taking place for the entirety of winter and spring 2026. We are planning additional webinars in the future, along with other interesting projects. So stay tuned for additional communications on that and continue to visit our website for the most up-to-date information. Today, it is my pleasure to welcome Lisa and Rob as our speakers for today's session. Both Rob and Lisa were present for our last 3 sessions and agreed to present afterwards because they had a lot to say and a lot to share. So I will pass the mic on to them. Lisa, Rob, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for preparing today's presentations.
Well, thank you very much, Brittany, and for all the hosts of this seminar series. Rob and I are really excited to share what we've been doing in Papua New Guinea. The way we're doing it is I'm going to first give an introduction to the program in Papua New Guinea, a little bit of background on tree kangaroos, and then I'm going to turn it over to Rob Liddell for talking more in depth about our One Health program and how it links into our conservation work. So just a little bit of background for me. I have been at the Woodland Park Zoo for a very long time in the capacity of being a senior conservation scientist for the last 20 plus years, and then also as senior director and founder of the Tree Kangaroo Conservation Program since 1996. I'm also an affiliate associate professor at the University of Washington here in Seattle. I do want to make mention, because Billy Karish is here, I don't know if he's aware of this, but he's the reason why I got involved with tree kangaroos in the very beginning. He introduced me to the senior keeper at Woodland Park Zoo when I was a graduate student in animal behavior at the University of Washington, wanting to do animal behavior research at Woodland Park Zoo, and then was introduced to tree kangaroos. So I started doing reproductive biology and behavior work on tree kangaroos in zoos, both at Woodland Park Zoo and also at Smithsonian at Front Royal for many years, starting in the 1980s, but then shifted to field work once I finished my graduate work. I also want to make mention of Fred Kuntz, because he was my boss for many years as I was developing this program and was a huge support to me for this work. So let me introduce you, just give you a framework for where we work. You can see the US, and then as part of the Pacific Rim, Papua New Guinea is all the way on the other side. It is north of Australia, and then also importantly, it's east of the Wallace's Line. And so marsupials, kangaroos, are very important on the island of New Guinea and Australia. And there are no large carnivores, no elephants, none of those on the island of New Guinea. And Papua New Guinea is the eastern half of the island of New Guinea. The other half is part of Indonesia. It's now called Papua and West Papua. But my work is really focused on the in the country of Papua New Guinea. It's an independent country since 1975, and it's often overlooked in terms of biodiversity in the world. But Papua New Guinea it's an amazing place. It's home to one of the world's largest tropical wilderness areas. It's approximated that about 70% of the forests are still intact in Papua New Guinea, and it contains over 5% of the world's biodiversity. I also want to make mention that really diverse forest habitats, both lowland rainforests and then high elevation cloud forests. It's actually very important in the world in terms of cloud forests that are left in the world. And that's where tree kangaroos live. So really high biodiversity in terms of plants and animals, insects, frogs. People probably know the birds of paradise, etc. It's an incredibly diverse place, and it's also culturally diverse. There's over 800 languages in Papua New Guinea. That's more than any country in the world. And so working in Papua New Guinea is both fascinating from my perspective, both culturally and in terms of biodiversity. So I just want to give you a little bit of background on tree kangaroos. In case you haven't heard of tree kangaroos, my goal in life is for everyone to know what a tree kangaroo is. They are true kangaroos. They're in the family macropod of kangaroos, wallaroos, and wallabies. They originally evolved in Australia from rock wallabies and then moved up. There was a land bridge between Australia and Papua New Guinea. And then they really speciated on the island of New Guinea. So currently there are 14 species of tree kangaroos that are recognized, 2 in northeastern Australia, and the rest are on the island of New Guinea. It's actually the largest mammal in New Guinea, which is very unusual. You know, cassowaries are the largest animal in New Guinea. But in terms of mammals, tree kangaroos are the largest mammal. And most of the species are either threatened or endangered. And over the time that I've been doing work in New Guinea, tree kangaroos have really become a flagship species for conservation. The main natural predator of tree kangaroos in New Guinea is the New Guinea harpy eagle. It's very similar to the South American harpy eagle, but a bit smaller. But that is the main natural predator. But in terms of threats to tree kangaroos, and since they are threatened and endangered, really the main issues are hunting pressure, and much of that is subsistence hunting pressure from local people for food and for their fur. Habitat loss from natural resource extraction, logging, mining, oil, human population increase and encroachment, forest clearing and burning, and climate change. And so the species that we focus on for the Tree Kangaroo Conservation Program is the Matschie's or Huon tree kangaroo, Dendrolagus matschii, and it is considered endangered on the IUCN Red List. And I want to point out that they're only found on the Huon Peninsula, and that area in the northeast part of Papua New Guinea. And that is isolated from the other mountain ranges by what's called the Markham Valley. And so it's an endemic species, and it's the only species of tree kangaroo that lives on the Huon Peninsula. And there are actually a lot of other endemic species that you find on the Huon Peninsula, which is quite interesting. And so after doing research in zoos on the biology of tree kangaroos, I started the Tree Kangaroo Conservation Program in 1996 basically knowing the tree kangaroos were endangered, knowing I had some knowledge about their biology, and wanting to make a difference for them in the wild. And so by finding out from different contacts, I was finally brought to a village called Tep Tep, which is in YUS, which is a local level government area. And YUS stands for the Yupno Orowa Som watersheds. And it is an area, and you can see it circled on the Huon Peninsula. It's a very remote area, no roads going in. And that is one of the reasons why it was a really good place to work, because some of the threats from outside, resource extraction was a little bit less here. And when I first went here, this whole range, particularly the Finisterre range, was considered a scientific unknown, which was incredibly exciting for me as a biologist going into this area. So no roads. So the only way into the use area is by small plane or by boat. And then once you get into, there's about 7 airstrips, grass airstrips in use. Once you get in there, then it's all walking tracks. And so to get up into the high cloud forest, up to where we study the tree kangaroos, it's about 2 days walk from there, but it's very remote. And there's also no electricity, none of, no running water. The water is all from the rivers in the area. One thing that's really fascinating about Papua New Guinea is the land tenure system. And this is true for the YUS area. And YUS is about 50 villages and about 15,000 people. So that's kind of the scope of the work that we're doing in this area. And so when I went into this area, what I first learned was that the local indigenous people, the local landowners, they own over 90% of the land and the seascapes in Papua New Guinea. And that land tenure system, it's a clan land ownership, and that is recognized by the national government. So to do any kind of conservation work or any development work in Papua New Guinea, it is working under the auspices of the local landowners. And so when I first went into use, it was all about getting permission to come into the area. And the whole approach for the conservation work was, I know tree kangaroos are endangered. I know that you hunt them. You can see in these photos that they also use the tails of the tree kangaroos as headdresses. Tree kangaroos are very important to the local communities culturally, as well as a source of protein. And so very early on, it was about asking questions about how many tree kangaroos did you hunt? How many can you hunt now? And they basically told me that the populations are going down, and there was a concern for the future, for their children, for their children's children. So the real approach for the work that we do is about supporting the local communities to make the best decisions for having sustainable resource for themselves. And I have to say that that's really my background as well, in terms of not going into a situation, with my preconceived notions, but basically asking questions, listening, and then figuring out how we can work together. So what we came up with, and this is starting in 1996, was that we cared about the species protection and tree kangaroos mainly, but that meant since they're the flagship, it would be many other species as well. We care about the habitat protection and land use planning, how people use their resources and their land. Community priorities, and that's mainly in health, education, and livelihoods. And then capacity building, training, leadership building. So those are kind of the 4 pillars of the work that we have been doing for the last 30 years. And so for the first 10 years, it was really both doing research on tree kangaroos to understand how they use the forest, what's needed in terms of protecting them, but also working with each of the clans to set aside portions of their hunting land as safe areas for tree kangaroos to breed, and then the young can then disperse into areas where they can still hunt. So it was never that we went in and said, stop hunting, because we knew that tree kangaroos are really important to them. Hunting them is very important to them. So for the first 10 years, we worked on setting up these areas, safe areas for tree kangaroos. And in 2009, we were able to use the Conservation Areas Act of 1978 that had never been used before, but the landowners decided to use this act and create the first official conservation area in Papua New Guinea. And that meant the landowners deciding to do this, then the district, then the provincial government. We had to get permission. It had to be approved at that level from the governor. And then it went to the national level. And then it was gazetted as the first conservation area in Papua New Guinea. And then in 2020, we actually re-gazetted it as a landscape level protected area that really doubled that area as a landscape level conservation area. And the reason why this works for the communities, and this was really monumental for them because it meant that these isolated communities, that there are 7 language groups in the YUS area, they all had to come together and decide together to create this area, but they didn't give up ownership of the land. And so why it works is that it created these, what they call wildlife banks, protected areas where animals can breed, disperse, and then they can have a sustainable resource management. And it turned out that historically, they had taboo areas of the forest, but when they had all been missionized, they stopped that practice. So it was in a way, it was going back to traditional practices for different purposes. And then the other reason is that by being stewards of the forest and of the wildlife, the Tree Kangaroo Conservation Program worked with them and made a commitment to support the communities in their health, education, and livelihoods. And so we created this conservation area. We set up a ranger program. We set up ways of monitoring. And then in 2013, we were able to create a local NGO. So that's a locally recognized NGO. And so now the Tree Kangaroo Conservation Program is really a partnership between the Woodland Park Zoo's Tree Kangaroo Conservation Program that started it all and this local NGO. And it's been a really wonderful and I think innovative partnership between a zoo and a local NGO in Papua New Guinea. And one of the things that has been really important, we got funding for a long time from Conservation International through their Global Conservation Fund. And part of that funding was to set up an endowment. So we actually have an endowment that is run through the Woodland Park Zoo, managed by our board. And we are able to utilize funding every year, and also to be able to tell the landowners that there will always be funding that will come through this program to support them to be stewards of the forest. So Ms. Modi Pontio is our director of the local NGO, and she leads a staff of about 40 plus staff members of rangers, conservation officers, technical team, and the majority of the staff actually come from the YUS villages and communities. We have 2 staff members based at Woodland Park Zoo, myself and Trevor Holbrook, who go back and forth to Papua New Guinea. And so these are our 5 program strategies for the work that we do. We have the protected area governance and management, the applied research and monitoring, replication and knowledge sharing within our region, also across Papua New Guinea. We do a lot of workshops across the nation. Community resilience and advocacy, which includes the livelihoods, education, and health, and then organizational sustainability, really bringing up and creating leadership within the local communities. And so we have ongoing programs in community planning, livelihoods, particularly a coffee project, applied research, particularly with tree kangaroos, education, and more, really looking at how to work with the elders in the communities on cultural values and maintaining the traditional cultural values in our work. Monitoring, ecological monitoring, and then our One Health program. Now, I could talk all day about the different programs, but today we're just focusing on our One Health work. And so very early on, when we went in and asked questions about community needs, really the big areas were education for their children, healthcare, because the communities are so remote that they don't have access to regular doctors. No doctors are in the area. They have the aid posts and health centers, but very few community health workers. So a lack of access to healthcare, and then livelihoods and a cash economy. And so what we were able to do back in 2005, I was able to convince the 2 people in this upper left photo. That's Blair Brooks and Nancy Phillips, my sister and brother-in-law. They were 2 physicians from Dartmouth-Hitchcock in New Hampshire. And they came and basically spent weeks going from village to village and talking to the community health workers, some of the politicians, the provincial health department, to look at what were the main needs of the communities, what were the gaps, like vaccinations, immunization program. They didn't have solar refrigerators in the aid posts, so there was real challenges getting vaccines to children. What were the main health issues, and so on. But very much the approach that we took was that if the communities are going to be the stewards of the forest and the wildlife, we needed to support them in having a healthy village. So we call it Healthy Village, Healthy Forests, with human, wildlife, and environmental health all interwoven. So they were able to work and really give feedback on the priorities. And then we set up our One Health program. And we started doing every 2 years, bringing in volunteer health professionals, doing health education workshops, working with the local midwives, identifying where could we be most useful, and then also doing some of the clinical work as well. But we're trying to move away from that, and Rob Liddell will focus on that as well. But that is kind of the basis where we really focus on human, wildlife, and environmental health, and how can we support these communities that are protecting rainforests, protecting tree kangaroos, and how can we keep these communities healthy. So now I'm going to turn it over to Rob Liddell. Rob has been working with me for a very long time on the Tree Kangaroo Conservation Program. I've known him for almost 40 years. He's a board member at Woodland Park Zoo. He's been a volunteer with the Animal Health Program at Woodland Park Zoo, but he has helped us with our tree kangaroo research as a radiologist, and he is really one of the leaders in our One Health program. So now I'm going to turn it over to Rob. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lisa, very much. That is excellent presentation, sharing your experience with all of us on Tree Kangaroo program. Let's just see here. So I am, as Lisa said, I am Rob Liddell, and I am a practicing diagnostic radiologist physician in the Seattle area. And I've been so fortunate to learn about and become involved with not only the zoo, but with the Tree Kangaroo Conservation Program and its One Health initiatives. For almost 40 years, I've been a consultant radiologist to the Animal Health Department at the Woodland Park Zoo. And I've been an advisor for One Health to the TKCP program. And all of that has led to an enjoyment of an affiliate association with the Center for One Health Research at the University of Washington. So an overview of what I'm going to talk about today is how I got started in One Health and how it kind of gets its involvement way back in medical school and the ethical lessons we learned way back then. I'm going to talk a little bit about my work as a volunteer at the zoo and then, of course, with Papua New Guinea, TKCP, but also what we have found then regarding the health situation in the YUS Conservation Area, what we have found, what we've accomplished, and what we plan to do. I'm going to summarize it in lessons learned, and that will allow us to have some discussion about some of the ethics that we touch upon as we provide some health care in Papua New Guinea. We'll talk about what the future holds. Acronyms I'm going to try to keep down to a minimum. You know what TKCP is, and you heard what YUS is. It describes a watershed of 3 rivers that forms the conservation area that has been gazetted. And I will be using that acronym here and there as I speak. If I use others, I'll try to explain them as we go. But in medical school, one of the first things we learn is the ethics of taking care of a human who needs health care. And we're told that the most important person in the world is that patient in front of us. And of course, that's true. It makes perfect sense. But of course, we soon learn after talking to that patient that other people are involved in those important healthcare decisions that people are making for themselves. It starts with their spouse, their children, other family members. It can be those with whom they work. It can be their church. And sometimes it's animals. Sometimes pets that they live with are more important to them than any other human. And some of you may think, oh yeah, that kind of describes me. But regardless, animals are really important in healthcare decisions made by people. Occasionally, it even stretches past animals and goes into things like, oh, my garden. What will happen to my garden if I'm not at home? If I'm in the hospital, my garden will fail. And so I just can't go into the hospital doctor. Well, good lessons. Well, let's now jump forward to my residency in diagnostic radiology at the University of Washington. I'm in my final years of training in the late 1980s, and I'm studying teaching files, preparing for my boards, and I say to myself and to others, the images of these animals are striking, or of these people are strikingly beautiful. Their structure, their anatomy is intriguing. It's more than just disease, it's actually a beautiful form. And I said out loud, I bet the zoo has a great teaching file. I think I'm going to go there and I'm going to ask if I could look at their teaching file because that'd be really wonderful. So I wrote to the zoo and I wrote a letter to the veterinarian at the zoo. I said, "Dear zoo veterinarian." I didn't even attempt to try to find out what the name of the veterinarian was. I just said veterinarian, and I hope I spelled it right. So I said, "Dear zoo veterinarian," told him who I was, and I told him that I'm interested in coming to the zoo and looking at the teaching file. I thought it'd be really interesting. Soon thereafter, I got a letter. It said, "Dear Dr. Liddell, so great to hear from you. We're nowhere nearly as organized as you may think. We don't have a teaching file, but hey, come to the zoo and we'll show you what we did yesterday." And that letter was signed by one Billy Karish, veterinarian. Here's a picture of Billy just a few years ago. He looked like that back in the 1980s as well. Billy and I really got along, and he grabbed me in and said, "Let's work together." And he knew a lot more about animals and their anatomy and their diseases and how to take care of them, but he had not yet learned how imaging, X-ray, MRI, CT could help him understand what the diseases were, how those diseases manifested on imaging to help him take care of his patients. But I knew that part and could help him. So we collaborated. And that was one of the first One Health collaborations I had ever had. And I wish I could say I was the one who coined the word or the term One Health, but I wasn't. It was Billy Karish who did that. Soon, Billy moved on from the zoo to paint on a much larger canvas and has done great work. And I know Billy's on this talk, and it's great to see you again, Billy. Thank you for inspiring me and many others, including Lisa Dabek. But I've gone on from here, as you're about to see. So I continued to work with the zoo veterinarians after Billy left, taking care of literally hundreds of animals over the decades. One of the first animals I ever took care of was indeed a tree kangaroo. And this tree kangaroo had a cough and a mass behind its heart. On the radiograph on the far left, interposed between those two blue arrows is that mass. Hard to get to, dangerous to get to, so we use CT to guide a needle into the mass to get tissue for a diagnosis. And here we are in the middle. I'm doing a CT-guided biopsy, placing a needle into the chest of the tree kangaroo to get some tissue. And that picture on the far right shows the needle in the periphery of the mass, which is the way we get the tissue. It came back showing an infection, a Mycobacterium avium infection, which is similar to tuberculosis in many ways. It can infect the lungs, it can infect any organ in the body. And for tree kangaroos, it's basically deadly. And I soon learned that this is not just a one-off. It happened to other animals as well, other tree kangaroos at the zoo and other zoos also. And in fact, a couple years later in the early 90s, I did another CT on a tree kangaroo, this time with a mass in its elbow region. I did a CT-guided biopsy on its ulna, which is a bone of the elbow, and it came back as Mycobacterium. So this was a problem. And the zoo veterinarians and lead keeper, the same one that was helpful to Lisa in getting her career started, said, yeah, this is a problem, that the mycobacterial infections are known to occur in tree kangaroos that we have here in zoos in North America. And we're trying to figure out why. We don't know if it happens in the wild, but we know it's a problem here and we're trying to understand it. And a lot of work has been done in this area since then. And I've been so fortunate that in my work with Lisa and with veterinarians, I've been able to go to Papua New Guinea, and there's a slide here, jumping ahead chronologically, go to Papua New Guinea and work with veterinarians. Picture on the left, Tim Storms and I. Tim is the current senior veterinarian at the Woodland Park Zoo. We're doing radiographs on a tree kangaroo to determine if it has any evidence of mycobacterial infection. And so far, after studying multiple tree kangaroos in the wild, we have not found any evidence of mycobacteria, which is of interest. But let's now jump to human care in Papua New Guinea. But it's interesting that One Health work veterinarians and physicians involves animals as well as people. So let's go back to One Health here. Let's see. There we go. So to date, there have been 6 teams of One Health medical providers that have gone to the YUS Conservation Area over the years. And as Lisa said, the first team was her sister and her brother-in-law, who spent quite a bit of time trying to understand what was the situation, what's the baseline situation in use. And healthcare is really important to the people of use, as Lisa said. It's one of the things that they wanted to see an improvement, along with livelihoods and along with education for their children. So 6 teams have gone. The first time I went is the picture in the lower left. I'm on the far right, and Blair and Nancy are on the far left. And in the middle is my wife, Marty Liddell, who is an internist, and I'm so grateful to her for all of my support. She's also not only a great doctor, but she is great at recruiting other physicians to come. And over the years, we've had multiple physicians come to join the team to help us assess and provide care. This includes, of course, radiologists, me, internists, emergency room doctors, obstetricians, and musculoskeletal experts, doctors, and physical therapists, as well as multiple healthcare educators. So when we go, what do? So the first thing we do is we create goodwill. We want to make sure that the people we are visiting know that we admire them. And picture in the upper left, our villagers welcoming us to use, and they're saying, please come. We are so glad you are here. Welcome to our village. And kids are dancing and wearing their ceremonial outfits. And when I address the crowd, I say to them, I am here because of you, because you take good care of yourselves and good care of your family and your villages and your forests and the animals that live within them. And I admire you for that. And in fact, I'm not the only one. You are becoming well known, not only here in the YUS area, but also throughout Papua New Guinea and throughout the world. And where I come from, in a big city in the United States, we're not very good at taking care of our forests and our water. And so I'm here because I want to learn from you. So other pictures here, lower left, Fred Coons in the middle of the picture came to help celebrate TKCP's 20th anniversary, a great way to create goodwill. Fred is and continues to be a great mentor, as he describes himself, a servant leader. He was one of the best and one of the first leaders of conservation at the Woodland Park Zoo. And Fred's on this call. I'm one of the leaders of this group, and I'm really grateful to him. And on the far right is Nancy Phillips, welcoming the crowd, or being welcomed into the crowd, giving a great cheer. And so that's how we can create goodwill. We also, of course, as Nancy and Blair did in the first visit, we continue to assess the health conditions. These are 2 of the clinics that we work in villages in use. People come from all over the area. Hundreds of people come to be seen as patients. We take care of them as well as we can, and we assess the diseases that they have. We use basic techniques. We listen to lungs, we listen to patients, and we do physical exams. I'm able to do chest and bone radiography. We look for tuberculosis, which has a very high prevalence. Here's Nancy Phillips doing the exam on a patient. And I'm going to go back. We see a lot of different diseases. Not surprisingly, many of them are communicable diseases, especially tuberculosis, but also diseases that could have otherwise been prevented by vaccines. We see untreated cancers, some of which are related to unsafe human behaviors, such as smoking and sexually transmitted infections that lead to cancers such as HPV, human papillomavirus, causing cervical cancer, but also squamous cell cancers in both men and women. And we've even seen liver cancers caused by hepatitis C, which is a sexually transmitted disease. We see a lot of respiratory disease due to smoke inhalation. As Lisa mentioned, wood is used for not only cooking, but also heating homes, and it's also used for lighting. There is, as Lisa said, there's no electricity as of yet. We'll talk about that in a second. So wood is used for all purposes, to include lighting. A lot of smoke inhalation for folks. We see a lot of women with emphysema, which is caused by smoke inhalation. We also see a lot of joint and back pain, a long list. But as we're going through all of this, one of the things that's prominent is that we realize that the prevalence of disease is actually worse than reported by WHO for PNG. And tuberculosis is an example of that. They estimate that there are about 650 people in Papua New Guinea per 100,000 that have tuberculosis, but our rough estimates are that it's substantially higher, as high as perhaps 900 per 100,000. There's poor access to basic health services and facilities. Some health centers are closed due to inadequate staffing. There are insufficient medicines and vaccines. Supplies and equipment are wanting. Sometimes vaccines are not available, but sometimes they're available, but the refrigerators to contain them are not working. The refrigerators are run by solar. Overall, there's a generalized failure of the provincial and district government authorities to adequately provide health resource services. And when the COVID pandemic hit, all the above became that much worse, and we are still recovering from that. While we are there, we have a big focus on health and hygiene education. We see patients in the clinic, but we also spend a lot of time talking and just listening, but talking about the health of people, the health of the forests, and we talk about basic hygiene and things like nutrition and clean water and sanitation, and the list goes on. We talk about what tuberculosis is and why we get it and why it is so difficult to treat. We talk about family planning. We talk about the importance of vaccines when they are available, how they can be used to prevent disease. And we talk about the dangers of smoke inhalation and what they do. The list goes on. We have a lot of different educators. All of the physicians, all of the physical therapists that come are part of the education team. And we also recruit educators from Papua New Guinea. Our healthcare coordinator, TKCP's healthcare coordinator, brings in other educators, and she also teaches. Here are some additional images. On the left is Emily Norland, an obstetrician from Seattle. She's demonstrating normal birthing techniques to volunteer birth assistants. The volunteer birth assistants, or VBAs, are inspirational because they are so excited about what they do. They're a great team of volunteers, and they're admired by their communities. And we hope to build on that concept of volunteerism to help with One Health going into the future. And we'll talk about that more in a few slides here. We go and talk in the schools. Here on the far right is Stephanie Bohr, who's one of the leader educators at the Woodland Park Zoo. She came with the team in 2025 to help revise the TKCP educational approach to learning using traditional knowledge from all age groups, from the elderly on through to youth. So, here we go. I am all of a sudden not able to advance, but there we are. Here we are teaching in the schools. That's my wife, Marty, demonstrating what it means to basically swallow and then breathe, how that works. The kids ask a lot of great questions, including some critical ones like sexually transmitted infections, including AIDS. They know about it. They know it's out there. So we talk about it. Questions are asked, we answer them very plaintively. We also are now moving towards veterinary education. In this picture here is Marissa Bejian. She is a veterinarian at Zoo Miami. She is she's actually a risen star in the tree kangaroo world. She is the lead tree kangaroo veterinarian for the AZA. And here she is in use doing a bit of education, teaching how to look at a dog and determine if it's healthy or if it's sick. And she's done the same with pigs as well. It's great. And people are fascinated by what she has to teach. One of the first things she has to teach is what is a veterinarian, because they've never had one before in Papua New Guinea. She also is working on the assessment of water quality. As Lisa said, there's no running water anywhere, and everything is coming from streams. And that stream water is shared by people and by animals, and it's affected by runoff from agricultural purposes as well. So we're very concerned about the pathogens that are growing in that and contributing to water-borne diseases. One of the most important things we do is we go back to the big cities and we meet with health authorities and we tell them what we have found and what we think and what we hope. And we ask them to step up and provide the health care that we know that they want to provide. They know that they are committed to provide. And we do this every time, and we're actually finally getting some traction that we'll talk about in a second. So let's move on to lessons learned. What are we learning from all of this? What's our vision for going forward? Well, first is we should build from what is working. As I said before about the success of the conservation area is all about the people. We start with that story. It's the most helpful lesson that we have, as the people of use have earned the respect and admiration from the rest of the world, from the provinces, from the nation, and now internationally, because of the way they live a One Health model. They've taken the problem and they've made it into a solution. And we know that the path to improved healthcare is going to come from within use and within Papua New Guinea. TKCP's role is to facilitate solutions, and otherwise the solution will be found locally. And that's been working, and we're going to move in that direction. Next, what else is working? Volunteerism. As I talked about, the volunteer birth assistants, the VBAs, are admired. They're an inspiration. And we hope to take their example and build on it. Perhaps having other corps of volunteers that will do other things, like as simple as taking medicines and educational material from one village to another. Nancy Phillips, one of the physicians, Lisa's sister, coined the word health champions. Perhaps we'll use that going forward to talk about this new group of volunteers that can be helpful for One Health purposes. Next lesson learned is first do no harm. A sentence we've heard many times, a sentence first written by Hippocrates a long time ago. Well, we know that intermittent health visits by TKCP medical teams are not enough. All they do is they raise expectations of the people of use, yet they do not allow for appropriate long-term care for chronic conditions, nor to provide complete diagnostic or therapeutic purposes. Instead, Papua New Guinean physician teams are better prepared to care for the people of use because they can provide the appropriate follow-up care and bring the medicines and the equipment as needed. And if needed, they can bring patients who are sick or need further testing or care back with them to their hospitals. And that actually happened in 2025. A medical team came from Madang, which is one of the provincial capitals that has authority within use. They came and they're the ones who provided the medical care, and the international team did education. So it was a great symbiosis that really collaborated well. Next, we don't want to interfere with the normal healthcare providers or their administration. Instead, the One Health team needs to work as a catalyst or a facilitator to help the provincial and district health authorities provide the health care that they are committed to provide. And recently, memoranda of understanding between TKCP and the provincial health authorities, and there are two, Morobe and Madang, have recently been signed. And they basically they're long, but they basically come down to we're going to work together to enhance access to essential health services in the YUS region. This is something that the authorities are committed to do. They want to be doing it. They're embarrassed they're not doing it, but they also know that it's difficult. They are constrained by budget. They are constrained by the remoteness of YUS. That's a big deal. As Lisa said, you can only get there by flying in or else walking for 2 days, and that's if you're used to it. I think I was told that if I did it, if Dr. Liddell, you did it, it might take 4 days. So I've declined to do so. Regardless, very remote, difficult to bring healthcare into use, but it must be done. It's what needs to be done. And it's really helpful that TKCP has brought YUS and the conservation area to the forefront. Great publicity. And so everybody wants to admire, be like the people of YUS. And so the provincial health authorities are going, we should be a part of this. And it looks like they're going forward. A great success. Health and hygiene education, as we talked about, is a building block for improving One Health. As the One Health teams go in, they'll continue to do education as discussed. And the TKCP now has a full-time healthcare coordinator based in Morobe province, and she is an excellent resource for One Health. The lower right picture on the far left is Rosalita, who is the full-time healthcare coordinator, along with a public health director from Madang province, and of course, Lisa Dabek. The healthcare coordinator will be able to do things like have regular educational sessions within YUS. She'll be able to bring other educators with her, and she'll be able to coordinate with those provincial health authorities along the lines of the memorandum of understanding in order to improve health and bring healthcare to YUS, as we've all committed to do. What's the future look like? Well, TKCP is drafting a 5-year strategic plan. And what's it going to look like? Well, we don't know yet, but more or less it's going to concentrate on healthcare provision by PNG providers, maternal care, family planning, respiratory diseases, tuberculosis, and on. But these are the things that we're really going to focus on. We're going to advocate for critical basic hygiene like safe drinking water and sanitation. We hope to find other entities and other NGOs that will come in and provide the infrastructure for those purposes, and that will be great. TKCP will be a facilitator or a catalyst. We're going to create a vibrant group of volunteers, perhaps calling them the health champions, as we discussed. TKCP has in the past and will in the future have scholarships for training healthcare workers that are committed to staying in use after they are trained. Veterinary education and animal husbandry education will aid in the care of domesticated animals. There'll be advocacy via the memoranda of understanding with the health authorities as discussed. There's also something new that's occurring, which is solar lighting is being installed in homes and also in schools, and to include solar power for schools. And here's a slide of boxes of solar entities being provided for installation, and on the right, a picture of a light high above a village square lighting it for the first time. And we're hoping that this means that less firewood will be needed, for burning in the homes, so that perhaps there won't be a need to have fire to read by at night, and that will lead to less fire use. And perhaps that will allow school children to study later into the day, so they can use light after it gets dark. And that might improve their scores on the educational testing that they undergo. So wonderful. I am grateful to all of you for all of your attention, and I look forward to discussion. And I will now go ahead and stop my presentation.
Well, thank you, folks. This is great. And I think Joanne has the first question.
I'm sitting in the front row, always saying, pick me. So I guess this question is for Lisa. Lisa, what metrics do you have that might or might not demonstrate the tree kangaroo the population is increasing as a consequence of your efforts, or I'm not quite sure what it is, how it's faring, but I'm interested in. We had an earlier presentation that showed that with efforts such as yours and Rob's, that the mountain gorilla population was actually increasing over a period of years. And I'm just wondering if you had those kinds of metrics, and what are they?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Joanne. We have created an ecological monitoring program. It's it's been evolving, and basically it's looking at transects going from the conservation area all the way close to the villages. Because initially when I went in, there were no tree kangaroos anywhere, near the villages, or and over these, now it's 30 years, we are seeing an increase in tree kangaroos, and also getting closer and closer to the village areas. So we're able to document that. We're now using camera traps to do that in transects. It's very hard. Tree kangaroos are elusive animals. So one of the things we're also looking at, and we're starting to partner with James Cook University in Australia, is drones and thermal imaging. And they've been successful with tree kangaroos in Australia to be able to identify and look. So we're going to be trying that as well. But those are some of the metrics that we're using. We also interview the hunters, and I know there's always, there's this sense of, should they tell us that they're hunting tree kangaroos? But we're always saying, it's a good thing. We see the tree kangaroo tails. I was just there in May for the 30-year celebration in the villages, and almost every cultural group had, tree kangaroo tails. That's a good sign to me. But anyway, it's so we also get the anecdotal information from the hunters and the communities. But we are continuing to work on metrics and able to document the impact.
And can I ask one follow-up question?
Sure.
At the risk of hijacking the whole conversation, you mentioned, I think, very early on about extractive industry, or do you work at all with them? And if so, what's the relationship, and what are they doing? Extracting wood, minerals? I can only imagine what that would be.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of extractive industry with gold, nickel, gas, wood, all of them. And I have to say that in Papua New Guinea, it's a fairly small community of conservation organizations, and we all work with the extractive industries. There's ExxonMobil there, there's Total there, and you can't get away from that. And so we try to work with them. There's a lot of support from the extractive industries for conservation work. it's definitely, we have to all play together
Yeah.
in it. Yeah.
Okay.
So to pick up on that thread, how does that extractive effort affect use, especially the
Yeah.
large group, the large landscape protected area?
Yeah. So great
Yeah.
question. We're actually quite lucky, and I would say it's because there are no roads yet in that area, very isolated. So I consider myself lucky that we were working in an area where we had the time, the 10 years, to build trust and to have the communities set land aside. Now that it is a nationally gazetted conservation area, no extractive industries can come in
Mm.
for that area. So we're not threatened for use, but in other areas for sure. We're very excited. We're being funded now by Rainforest Trust Foundation to work on the idea of a protected area network across the whole Huon Peninsula. So that's the whole range of the Matschie's tree
Hmm.
kangaroo. And this, we did some workshops with the different districts within the province. And everyone is really excited about setting up a network. And that will continue to protect the whole area from extractive industry. Yeah.
Now, is that network conceived as a series of sort of modules of land use connected by corridors in which but I don't know anything about whether tree kangaroos themselves migrate from one space to a next. They're arboreal, as I understand it, so my thought is their movements are up in the trees per se, not along the ground and moving geographic distances. So, what is that network going to do?
Yeah, so tree kangaroos don't migrate. They're generalists in terms of their food. They're folivore, mainly folivores, but they have plenty of food, and the forests are healthy forests. So we're not talking about degraded forests. So and females have separate home ranges. Males move from one female to another, and so. What it will do, it won't be corridors in the sense of migration corridors,
Hmm.
but it will be linked so that there's healthy forests across the whole peninsula. And I have to say that we have gotten so many communities across the Huon Peninsula coming to TKCP saying, we want to do what you're doing. And so this is a way of allowing other communities, to take charge and be stewards. Yeah. And this is going to be a model for the country because no other province has done this, where we're really linking together.
Hmm.
But again, it's still owned by the local landowners, still owned by the local communities, but just gazetted as no hunting zones, protected
Interesting.
areas.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have some follow-ups for that too, but let me wait on those. Other questions. Fred, you look like you have something that you want to say.
Well, that was an interesting comment, Bill.
I know you, Fred.
Yeah, and so does Lisa and Rob. Um, One thing that, just hearing this progress, you've made such great progress over the 30 years. I find it interesting that when the gazetted area was first being talked about, was this idea of a food bank, which made a lot of sense. And I think if I remember the story right, that historically there were non-hunting areas. There were areas that were taboo. So it's interesting that in a way there was always these areas that were left off of hunting as safe areas. But what I find interesting as you're moving forward, the idea of the food bank is really
Wildlife bank is what they call it.
okay. Wildlife bank.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's kind of becoming more a health bank, right? Or maybe that's not the right
Yeah.
word, health facility,
Yeah.
Because one of the challenges we've had with One Health really is people with enough facilitation and work, and actually ever since the Greeks, air and water, Rob, people understand is related to human health. But, where we've really struggled is that biodiversity itself is connected to human health, right?
Yeah.
And so what I find really interesting is you've got them in the use area really understanding that the forest, and if I remember right, they kind of think of the forest as really a living entity.
Absolutely.
That that this really is kind of making that final flip, I think, or final turn to the idea that biodiversity area is really their not health bank, probably isn't the right word, but it's like their health center
Yes.
or health
Yeah.
facility, which is really cool, and
Or
which I
health
think is
source.
health
Yeah.
source. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so that's
That's a
hey,
great point, and it's something to actually to talk with them more about,
Yeah.
so that they can actually take, ownership of that idea,
yeah,
and be proud of that idea.
yeah. It's like the headwaters of health. Actually,
Exactly.
the gazetted area in the forest, and that's really cool. And I think
Yeah.
that's the kind of model that we're trying to inspire people, everywhere, including in Washington State, where Lisa and Rob and I live.
Yeah, and I think this idea of what have been traditional ways of protecting habitat or protecting forests, like trying to get at that, because my guess is there's a lot more of that got destroyed or ignored or, stopped. And I know there's a lot of talk about, traditional knowledge, and that should be
Yeah,
a part of traditional knowledge, gathering.
yeah, great.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyway, you guys are so inspiring, and it's such a great example of where we should be moving in conservation in general. So, congratulations again. 30 years. I can't believe that. I thought it was still like 20 something. 30. Oh my gosh.
You were
Anyway.
at the 20th
I know, and it seems like yesterday. I'm sure you got the numbers wrong, but anyway, we'll get back on that later. But thanks again for the
What was
presentation.
very interesting at the 30-year celebration, it was 2 days it was 18 different cultural groups, sings nonstop. It was really amazing. A lot of gifting and appreciation for what DKCP has done, but a lot was about the importance of their culture, and they don't want to lose the culture. And I
Wow.
think that's something that really struck me. And I think we really want to emphasize, and the work that Stephanie is going to be doing with us on education. Yeah, they kept saying we want the cultural component to be just as important as wildlife conservation.
Wow. Great.
Let me pick up on that with a question, and that's I, as you were talking, I was wondering about the worldviews of the local communities, individuals and social groups towards the forest and towards the animals in the forest. And Fred, and you have just touched on that in the context of traditional knowledge. Can you say something about that for us, either of you?
About their views.
Yes, about their own
Yeah,
views about the forest and the animals who live in the forest.
yeah. It's, I only touch the surface. I think of it as like layers of onions. In 30
Mhm.
years, I've gone down, but their culture is so complex and really based on symbolism, and the depth of their culture is amazing. Even having been missionized, and all of them
Mhm.
have been missionized. And so, over the 30 years, I've been privileged to hear some of their views, the spiritual
Mhm.
views of their forests, shapeshifters, what's in the forest, what's important to them, stories. And it's hard to verbalize, but I
Mhm.
would say that their forest is incredibly important, incredibly rich. The animals that are in, I mean, all of the songs and dances in the celebration, it was a lot about, dressed up as cassowaries or
Mhm.
tree kangaroos
Mhm.
and so it's incredibly rich. Like if we could capture that,
Mhm.
um, yeah, and so I think healthy forests, and healthy wildlife is really important to them because it's so important to who they are as people.
Mhm. Mhm. Do they see, to the best of your knowledge, and I realize this is also can be distorted by the missionizing that went in. But let me make an analogy before I ask the question. In North American First Nation cultures, you have some cultures that are very anthropocentric, and see the animals in their areas as simply resources. You have other First Nations who really see animals as part of a larger family or a larger moral community to whom they have direct responsibilities. It doesn't prevent them from hunting or living a subsistence livelihood, but it's a very different way of thinking about animals than just instrumentalizing them. And that's partly what I'm trying to get after
Yeah.
is what is their sense of, let's say, the tree kangaroo when they wear that tree kangaroo's tail around their head. Is this just an animal that they hunt for meat, or is this animal symbolic as well, or is there it's a regard for the well-being of the kangaroos themselves?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Tree kangaroos, cassowaries, birds of paradise, incredibly important to them culturally and who
Hmm.
they are as people.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say, yeah, absolutely. One thing, what we're doing is we do an exchange
Hmm.
between the Lummi Indian Nation and the Papua New Guinea and YUS. And that's been a fascinating exchange of cultural values, differences, similarities, and so on.
Hmm.
But that
Yeah.
sense of the importance, the symbol of an orca or of an eagle, a wolf, and then who they are, even if they hunt. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's something that I've been moving more and more towards, is this supporting Indigenous communities to talk about those values,
Right.
as being stewards of the forest.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
teasing out of that conversation, this is overstating it because many people are true believers after conversion and missionizing. But what were the prior authentic beliefs of a community in its full range of diversity
Yeah.
at one point in time, and how that has survived, transformed, been syncretized with the missionizing religions, et cetera, or worldviews? I just don't want to restrict this
Exactly.
to religions. Is really, really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I've experienced is, they go to church on Sundays. Most of them
Mm.
are Lutheran, on the Huon or in
Oh,
use.
interesting.
Um,
Interesting.
and there's definitely, I've sat through many, many, church services, and at every workshop. Papua New Guinea, is very much a Christian society. So any workshop we go to, there's always a prayer at the beginning and at the end, all of
Mm.
that. But when push comes to shove,
Mm.
it is the traditional culture. If there's problems or whatever, there are shamans. There are,
Hmm.
they go to their traditional,
Yeah.
healing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The
Yeah.
syncretism is such a feature of religious conversions and culture exchange. I'm not surprised. Not
Yeah.
surprised. Joanne,
Yeah.
you want to jump in here? Don't let me monopolize the conversation with questions.
Sorry. If anybody else wants to go, please do it now. Um, yeah, I'm interested in how, kind of building on what Bill just asked, how the beliefs of these communities has informed or changed the work that you and Rob have done. Is it more kind of you're going in and helping them to learn some new things, or have their beliefs, some of which you just spoke about, has it changed the way you do things? Has it changed the way you think about things? It's a question for either of or both of you.
Yeah. Rob, do you want to start?
Yeah, no matter where you are, you have to take those kinds of things into account. And it's important to learn from the person in front of you what their basic spiritual beliefs are. So it does affect. But as Lisa said, it's really complicated
Yeah.
in use. And we gotta be, I'm just really careful to not insult anybody regarding their beliefs. but a lot more is to be learned. There are others, not us, that use spirituality for physical and emotional healing throughout history, through the world. And this is not something that Western medicine that I was trained in really does. But it's out there, it's powerful, it's important.
Yeah.
And in terms of like informing your work, though,
Yeah. Definitely some experiences that I've had in the, in my working time, or, with communities, it's opened my world to, I'm not a religious person. I'm Jewish, but I'm not religious. But I now believe in ways like sort of the power of spiritual belief in a way that I didn't before. And so I think it's influenced me in terms of being open-minded, and, and not saying Western ways are, Western healing or whatever. That, yeah, it's a way, and I think it's been the way I've approached the work from the beginning, of listening, not coming with answers, but listening, but on a whole other level from some of the experiences I've had. I don't know if that answers your question.
yeah, to some extent, but rather than follow it on with another question, I think Billy had a question, so I'll let him go.
Okay. We can
Dr.
talk more
Karish.
about that.
Hello, Billy. Nice to see you.
Good, thank you. I do not actually have a question. I just have a comment, which is this has just been the highlight of my day. And I am so impressed with what the two of you have been able to do. And I just hope you take a moment occasionally to be proud of what you've been able to accomplish, because I know you probably don't actually think of it that way, either of you, very often, and I think you should. And then I'm really also impressed with just how gracious both of you are and generous you are with your praise of the people you work with and the others that have been working with you. And that's a rare thing to see in a competitive world. And that's really touched me. And I feel really honored that I got to know you many 4 decades ago and work with you. And Lisa, you did me a big favor by working with Judy Steenberg, because she's a fountain of energy, and we had to distribute that energy amongst a number of people, and you were one of them, so that was always a big help. And Rob, I sent you that little paper about Zuri the gorilla, and I know that we all get caught up in the statistics and how many acres we saved and how many people, but those are just statistics, and sometimes it's the individual lives that we have to also remember. And Rob, you helped save the life of little Zuri the gorilla, and taught me how to reduce an intussusception. And I still remember, that 1 liter, 1 meter high rule to get that thing to pop back out. And that little guy grew up to be a massive silverback gorilla. I think he moved to New York. So I just want to compliment you. I have to kind of run, but I didn't want to let you off with knowing how amazing it is what both of you have been able to do with all your colleagues and friends. So thank you.
Billy,
Thank you.
Billy, thank you so much. And you are a legend at Woodland Park Zoo.
I don't know about that.
No. You are. And I've told that story about writing a letter to the zoo veterinarian many times, often in front of a microphone. So yeah, it's great. And people know your work here and are really grateful, and all the impact that you've had. And indeed, you've affected many people. You have painted widely. And good job.
Woodland Park is a very special place, and we have to thank people like Jim Foster for creating the environment. And the curators back then, and Lee and Greg, and some of them that really set the table for all of us youngsters to, to really get together and have a feast and to do good things. And it wouldn't have been without them setting the culture of that organization. And Fred, thank you for inviting me. And I see Wendy has been hovering behind you. Hey. Anyway, thanks, Fred. I'm really glad you reached out and got me so I could listen
Thank
in.
you, Billy.
Thank you.
We
Thank you
build
both.
on the shoulders of others, and that's how
That's
I feel.
right. We all have done that.
So I've followed your career.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Stay in touch.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
Will do.
Thanks, Billy. Karen, you're up next.
Great. Hi. Well, I'm one of those who used to be the younger folks, but now I'm not. I'm now one of you older folks. I always had a question, Lisa, for you. When you first went to Papua New Guinea, what was your approach in engaging the people there to be interested in the tree kangaroos and everything, because they're an indigenous community, different culture, different everything. How did you go and say, well, you need to do this to save the tree kangaroos? What was your approach to the people to get all of this started? I just wondered that.
Yeah. So thanks for that question, Karen. When we first went in, and I say we because it was Will Betts and myself, he was a volunteer who became a graduate student. When we first went in, it was really kind of humorous, because I went in and I said, hi, I know about tree kangaroos. I'm a biologist. I've been studying them. And they looked at me and they said, why are you not studying them in your own forests? Like, what are you doing here? And then I said, you're very lucky that tree kangaroos only live here, that people, in America care about them. They have them in zoos, but you're the only ones. Yeah. But then it was asking questions. I said, how many tree kangaroos did you used to hunt? And they would say, oh, plenty, and they were close to the village. And then I said, how many do you hunt now? And they said, oh, one, we have to walk further. And then I said, do you want your children to be able to hunt, your children's children? And through those conversations, I never said, you should do this. It was from those conversations about them realizing, oh, the populations are going down. We're not seeing as many. And we want our kids to hunt. And that was the basis of talking about conservation. And what I could say is, well, I know about the biology of tree kangaroos. I know that a tree kangaroo will have one offspring. They stay with their mom for 18 months. So it's a very low reproductive rate, because they would say, oh, we hunt the females. They're easier to find because they have the joeys in the pouch. And I'd say, think about that. And then also think about other possums that have multiple young. So I was able to then infuse the biology, my knowledge, to help them to make those decisions. Yeah.
And how did you sort of break the ice? I mean, was there any resistance? Here's this white woman coming into their village, and but obviously your approach is very, very gentle and show them what what it would do for them, and to engage them to be involved. But was there any resistance at all, or did you?
There was definitely some people that questioned what we were doing, and wondered what we were doing. It took definitely time, but we were able to. There was one of the members of parliament was from the village, and we used advice from him. He was actually a teacher to begin with. And then we spent time in the village. We had gotten the name of one landowner, and we went into the village. Actually, this landowner we thought would show us tree kangaroos. We went into his forest. There were no tree kangaroos left. They had all been hunted out. And they kind of watched us, like people watched us. And then slowly, as they saw what we were, talking about, they said, well, do you want to meet the best tree kangaroo hunter in YUS? And it's my cousin. And that was Mampave, who was the original landowner. And so we hiked up a day to find him. And he agreed to take us into the forest to show us tree kangaroos. But it was definitely, them sort of observing us, watching us. I think the fact that I was a white woman was kind of just weird. I think for them, I don't think it was, yeah. And Will and I were together on that. But it was really this building relationships, and then we got to know Mampave's family. And then they were the first ones to set land aside. And then it just kept building from there. And then Mampave became our best advocate, talking to other clans. Yeah, that's why, it's so important. And I think one of the reasons why being based at a zoo for me allowed me to go slowly, because so, especially, when I started, you would get 1 year grant or 3 years grant or whatever. You can't accomplish things in 1, 3, even 5 years. So I was able to just keep going back and build the trust over time.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, the work is amazing. I've been involved with the Tree Kangaroo SSP forever, and as a data management advisor. And but the stories that you bring back and the communication that we get in the Tree Kangaroo SSP is really, really valuable. So we really appreciate that. And so thank you.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question, comment. Is there anyone out there who hasn't spoken who wants to share something with us?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Marissa.
Yes.
Who's joined us. Marissa was that woman in the photo testing water and teaching us about how to look at a dog. Hey, Marissa, thanks for joining us. Thanks for all the work that you do. Marissa is heavily involved in trying to understand the health and biology of tree kangaroos. She's really a leader.
Thank you for letting me help.
Yeah, no kidding.
Absolutely.
We love it.
I think I've only been there once in 2023 for the trip, and I found it really fascinating to bring a veterinary perspective. And the people during the workshops had really great questions that made me think. I was trying to talk to them about animal health as they're bringing in more domesticated animals for protein and other sources, and the way they manage the sheep. I'll say, well, what do you do with the sheep? And they're like, oh, we eat the sick ones. And I was like, okay, maybe you should eat the healthy ones, and trying to just instill, I don't know why they're dying or they're sick or if they're parasite, who knows, but basic quarantining, okay, for human health, let's move the sick ones away for 2 weeks. If they get better, great. If they die, that's fine. At least everybody else is healthy. Eat the healthy ones, especially if there's pregnant women. So talking about some of those things. And then one of the other questions I had, which I thought was interesting, is pregnant women were asking, well, if we give birth and we lose a lot of blood, should we just drink the blood of the animals to replace our blood? And I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. I can understand why you would do that, but it's probably not healthy to drink raw animal blood, from a pathogen perspective. So just talking about maybe eating cooked meat, for iron and things like that. So it was great to hear those perspectives on human health and the way that, they think of health. And then just, having some sort of animal knowledge to think about how to manage those things so that they are hunting less and they have, adequate protein and stuff. So it's been very rewarding to be part of this experience.
It's a great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Marissa.
Yeah. Need more of that.
Joanne, did you want to say something quickly?
Just one quick question. Veterinary services in Papua New Guinea and in the area where you work, are there any? Nothing.
There's
Okay.
probably maybe a handful of veterinarians in the whole country.
Okay, yeah. Not surprised.
Really.
Okay.
No,
And
no
probably
vet, no vet school.
livestock, more domesticated animals,
Yeah, there's one
Yeah.
RSPCA, vet, but
yeah, no.
yeah, but not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, look,
That's
I
good.
want to say thank you for this. It's been a wonderful conversation. First I want to thank Lisa and Rob for being here with us and providing, just a wonderful wealth of knowledge and for the basis of that conversation. The rest of you have joined us and participated in that conversation, and of course, the Society for Conservation Biology North America for partnering with PanWorks on these webinars and podcasts. PanThinks is a production of PanWorks, an ethics, science, and policy think tank for the well-being of animals. It is edited and produced by Gary Shear with the help of Bill Lynn. To learn more about PanWorks, visit our website at panworks.io. To donate to our work, please visit our support page on our website. Until next time, this is PanWorks, bringing ethics to life.